Okay, I was literally in the cutest outfit and then I was too hot and I was like, you know what, I literally don't care. I'm just gonna wear this t-shirt, which I probably wore for the past like 3 of these videos. So welcome. If you can hear my mum in the background, I'm so sorry. She is on a Zoom call and she speaks way too loud, and also she's having major technical difficulties. I'm actually certain you're gonna hear her. She's really like, she's trying to sort out with someone, and it's honestly the soundtrack of my life. Anyways, welcome to this video. Today we're going to be talking through my best books of 2020. I feel like I've read more than I ever have, but I also feel like my reading mood was like this. And I also carried my Goodreads goal based on the fact that I read tons of audiobooks. Having said that though, I did read some physical books and I also read some ebooks and whatever. So this list is a mixture of those kind of sort of things. This video has been a long time coming because I feel like I've been in a slump since November. I've never felt less like wanting to read, which is just so frustrating. I've read like 60 pages of a book in a couple of days, so I feel like I'm starting to get out of this a bit, but it has been really like annoying in terms of my motivation to want to speak about books that I've been consuming, like my wrap-ups or this video for example. I'm definitely the last person on your feeds to be uploading this video, but it's here finally and I guess that's all that matters. Yeah, I think I've also been putting it off because I haven't been feeling very eloquent lately. Yeah, it's just been a weird time for me. Kind of to do with the good old C word, but also, I don't even know. I don't want to get into it, so we just won't. It means that I've been in a funk kind of since November, and I feel like that's the reason why I haven't been reading as well. I just have had no motivation to do anything that I love or have enjoyed doing in the past, and I feel like lots of my interests are changing or like temporarily picking up other things. I'm listening to like tons of music because I feel like that's the only thing that's really like capturing my attention now, and also kind of distracting me a bit from the way that I'm feeling. I don't want this to be like a little mental health chat, but I think it's important when you're feeling like that to allow yourself to deviate from your usual interests if you feel like you can't deal with them right now, and not force yourself to. So I'm going to jump back in time, the beginning of 2020, and I'm going to go in order of the months, all the books that I read, in order I read them. I've got 2 top favourites, but the rest of this are not in order. I'll mention first and second place books when I get to them, but also before I begin I did want to mention a couple of honourable mentions. I'm just going to reel them off. So first of all is The Hunger Games by Suzanne. I reread this book. If you want to watch me experience reading that book for the second time 10 years later or whatever, you can definitely check out that video. It will be linked up in the cards. Next is Here We Are, which is a notes on Planet Earth or something like that. It's a picture book, loved it, beautiful picture book, definitely recommend it. Then I read The Canterville Ghost, which is by Oscar Wilde. It's a short story. I read that around Halloween. Again, I did a Halloween vlog, which will also be linked below all the videos where I mentioned the books that I'm going to be mentioning in this video, if you guys are curious about like more in-depth thoughts or whatever. That was great, very funny but also like meaningful. Then I read The Selfish Giant in December, which is also another Oscar Wilde short story, 5 pages long, and I loved it. Oscar Wilde short stories, Oscar Wilde in general, just check them out. Winter Story by Barklem, which is a story within her like larger season story in the Bramley Hedge series. Again, I read that in December and it was just darlings. Those were all of my honourable mentions. Now we're going to get into my top 10. First of all, we have Tweet Cute, which I read in January, and I actually read this book because I got sent an arc of it by NetGalley, which was amazing, and that was sent I think via the UK publisher. I got contacted by the US publisher and they asked me, maybe it's the UK, I don't know, they basically wanted me to be part of their blog tour for the like release of this book. So it means that every single like creator they choose like posts a photo or like a video or whatever of this book to like hype it up before it's released. So they give you like an early copy or whatever. So I read my NetGalley copy and I did an Instagram post for them, which was really cool to be invited to do that. I'd never been contacted like that before, and I was really hyped for this book anyways because I'd obviously requested it on NetGalley because it was marketed as a You've Got Mail retelling, and You've Got Mail is one of my favourite films and one of my mum's favourite films as well. It's a very like nostalgic film for me. I've watched it for years. I obviously said yes. I did the blog tour thing. While I was doing it I was kind of hesitant because I was like, oh my gosh, what if I hate it? But no, it actually turned out that I loved it, and it was unusual because I usually don't get on too well with contemporaries because I'm a fantasy girl. Usually I'm a fantasy girl, honestly, like who knows what I am now. Tweet Cute follows 2 characters. I have to like throw my brain back to January because I literally can't remember anything. So there's this girl, her mum owns a, oh no, maybe it's her parents. I think it's her parents own a nationwide fast food chain, and then there's this guy and his parents own a little small independent deli in New York City. It's basically about their relationship with each other when the little deli claims that the big fast food chain has stolen one of its recipes and sends like a little like petty tweet out like aimed at them, and it turns out that the boy and the girl are actually in charge of their parents' social media account. To think that would happen like in real life, but whatever, we're just like run with it. And they kind of get in this Twitter war with each other. At the same time, they know each other in real life, but they don't know that their parents own these companies or that they're running these Twitter accounts. In real life, they're sparking up this kind of like friendship, potentially going into a romance, and then online they're also like attacking each other. So it's like this weird thing going on. But honestly, I loved it. I loved the characters. I thought it seemed really realistic. I loved being in New York. I also loved how the age group of these two people was the last year of school, so they were going to college and they were panicking about what they wanted to do at college, and I just thought that was really relatable, and also like a age group that's not kind of like usually focused on in YA contemporaries. Kind of like new adult almost. By Emma Lord, by the way, I don't think I said. And she's got a new book that's either just come out or it's coming out, and I'm definitely interested in picking that one up. So I definitely recommend that book if you guys are into a quick little contemporary that's just like good fun and nothing more really. So yeah, that was Tweet Cute. Really enjoyed it and really recommend it. I read Queen of Nothing. I actually physically cannot believe that I read this book in 2020. It feels like I read it in 2019. Crazy. This is the third and final book in the Fog of the Air series by Holly Black. It's a funny one actually, because now I think about it over the course of 2020, I kind of was like thinking to myself like, maybe this isn't a 5-star. Enjoyment level was a 5-star, but critically it's probably more of like a 4 or a 3.5 or something like that. The third book in a series. I'll talk about the first book, The Cruel Prince. The Cruel Prince, I'm sure you all know it, but follows Jude and his twin sister Taryn and their stepsister Vivi, who are stolen away from like the human land and brought into the land of fairy. It's basically about Jude and Taryn, but mostly Jude, growing up in fairy as human. Humans are really like hopeless creatures compared to fairies. Father, he's called Maddox, of Vivi, is actually the general of the army in fairy, so they kind of live within the royal residence, but they obviously are like so looked down upon because they are human. Vivi's like half fairy. Yeah, it's just basically following that, and there's tons of court politics, so if you're into that, or if you're into like that very magical like devious fairy world, then I think you would enjoy the Cruel Prince series. It's definitely like one with lots of twists and turns. Queen of Nothing is no different. The only thing is it's just so short, and for a conclusion I feel like it really wasn't enough. But having said that, there was this short story collection which came out in November or December of 2020, and that kind of like clears up a lot of the things that you're like, hang on a sec, what's that about? So I feel like that book did definitely clear this one off a little bit, but I still don't think it's probably worthy of a 5-star. But whatever, I give it 5 stars, and for now, until I reread it, I'll probably keep my rating at 5. Next, I read a book called Hood by Jenny Elder Moke. It's Moke. This book, I just have really good memories of reading it. I think I read it during the beginning of lockdown back in March. I contacted Disney to try and get an ARC for it. They only give ARCs to US residents, and I live in the UK. Said it wasn't possible, but then they managed to get me an e-ARC for it, which was so kind of them, and I loved it. 5 stars. It is a retelling of Robin Hood. Not retelling, like a continuation of Robin Hood, but we're following Robin Hood and Maid Marian's daughter. The continuation of Disney's Robin Hood, I should say. You're following his daughter. He's still like out helping people in the forest, but Maid Marian lives in the castle with her daughter. I think she's called Sophie or Isabel. Isabel's sent to meet her father, but I don't think she's aware of who her father is. But anyways, it's just such like a fun adventure story. Basically, if you love the Disney Robin Hood, then you'll love this book, and it's really authentic obviously because it was produced and published by Disney Hyperion, which is Disney's like publishing team. It's a good fun like adventure novel. I definitely want to get a real copy of it for myself. Same with all the books I mentioned here that I read via ebook or audiobook. Particularly what I loved is the dynamic between Robin Hood and Isabel, because it's kind of a similar like father-daughter dynamic as the father-son dynamic in Forks, which is like one of my all-time favorite books, and that kind of like estranged father to like their child. For some reason, really enjoy it. Daddy issues. That was Hood. Gosh, that just grew up like stupid chaotic, didn't it? Next, I read The Pugsby and Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. So this came out, I think, in the 90s. Yeah, 99. Book I've always wanted to read. A film which I really enjoyed, which was actually produced by the author, which is super cool because he's like got an interest in film. So that's the reason why the adaptation was so accurate to the book. So if you enjoy the film, you'll enjoy this, and vice versa. I found this in a charity shop and I was so keen to get to it. It's a super short little book and it is a modern classic. We're following Charlie. I think he's got 3 years left of school or something like that. Potentially 2. It's super intelligent but also very socially awkward and shy, and so for that reason he doesn't have many friends or any friends, but he makes friends with a group of seniors at his school who kind of adopt him into their little like crazy group. So it's basically a coming of age story, and it's really beautiful, and it's also an epistolary. Oh my gosh, how do you say that word? Which basically means it's written in like a letter format, so you have a date and then it will say dear friend, and it's from Charlie himself recounting these events that happened in his life recently, and then he'll put love always Charlie, and you never know who it's to exactly, but I think it's not really to anyone. It's just kind of like a diary kind of format. There are tons of trigger warnings for this book. Charlie suffers with PTSD from an event that happened in his childhood, so I'll link all the triggers down below, but you can just not look at that if you're not interested in looking at that. There are some parts that are really devastating and shocking to do with his childhood. I love Charlie so much, and one of my favourite characters that I read this year. Maybe my favourite character. Next up, I read Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling. So Many a day goes by where I wish that J.K. Rowling hadn't done what she'd done, so I could just freely talk about this book without upsetting anybody, because I loved it. But if you're not interested, I'll put like a timestamp on the screen you can skip to. Yeah, I read this during lockdown, I believe in April or something like that, and it was great escapism. And it was obviously before all that stuff came out about J.K. Rowling or whatever happened. And I feel like it was just like a great book to be reading during that like hopeful fresh quarantine part where it just felt nice to be like home from uni. Obviously the world was super scary, don't get me wrong, but it was spring. Everything just felt like light, and it was also like a good escapism from like the scary numbers that kept like rising on the news every day. Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why I enjoyed this. I also enjoyed this because obviously I like the Harry Potter series, I love the films. I've never read this book before, and there's so much content from this book that's not included in the film version of it. This was meant to be broken up into 2 films, part 1 and part 2 of the Goblet Fire. Didn't think that was like a good idea, which I'm kind of glad they didn't do that. My favourite character, for example, was Pigwidgeon, which is Ron's owl, and she's just not in the films at all. And then there's this whole bit to do with house elf rights, which again is just like not mentioned, and it's like a major theme in this book. Tons of tabs, look at my tabs. It was just like a really cozy book to be reading, and I enjoyed my time reading it, and I feel like I had to put it on this list. Next up, I read Encounters with Jesus by Timothy Keller. So this is a Christian nonfiction. I didn't read many at all in 2020. I'm reading one at the moment actually, and I feel like I've been really craving it. So this book I decided to pick up because it was in my like lockdown TBR, isolation TBR, I can't remember what it's called, I'll link it. Basically answers some big questions in life. I thought they were really good ones to be paying attention to, or like seeking the answer to during a time where things felt so unknown and scary. Oh my gosh, like honestly the like vocab people have to describe the like lockdown period / 2020 event is like very limited. I'm sick of people saying it, but then I found myself saying it, and it's just kind of annoying. What is my purpose in life? Who am I meant to be? How can I live a successful life? Why is there so much wrong with the world today? Am I part of the problem? What can I do to help change that? And the way I answered that was basically by breaking down a bunch of Jesus' encounters with people, or probably people's encounters with Jesus, which is more accurate. Obvious ones like the turning water into wine when Jesus was tempted, or the Good Samaritan, and all those stories. Some of them were less well known. I found them all really valuable, and I really liked how there was lots of scripture contained in this book, but it was also broken down and like explained in this way that answered these big questions, and I really appreciated it. And I think I definitely learned a lot more even from the more well-known stories. I don't know, I talk about it more in my wrap-up. I feel like I'll link that down below or whatever, but I would definitely recommend it.
You have a very nice pen that I can buy.
Very nice pen?
Is it like just a nice pen?
What does that mean?
I mean, like, do you have a nice pen?
Like what?
Like,
what is this for?
Fountain pen.
No.
Do you have a pen that you like to write with, that feels nice to write with?
Well, you can look in that drawer. So I can draw down. I literally have like gel pens and then just like normal biros and stuff.
Do any of them feel particularly nice to write with?
I don't know. Yeah.
Like.
I also find with Christian non-fictions they can be quite repetitive, and I really dislike that because I think it's important for the author to convey their point, but I also think they can do that in a way that kind of adds to it than just like regurgitating the same information like 50 times over. That didn't happen in this book, which I really appreciate. Next, I think we're going to move on to a fun one, are we? Yes. So this is my favourite book of 2020, Thunderhead by Neil Suzanne. I've gone on and on about this book, and I've also seen a lot of people read it. Some of my recommendations, some people just happen to read it, and they don't dislike it, but they don't love it, you know, and I really, really adored it. And I think the first kind of third, I would never have thought it would have been my favourite book of the year. The last kind of half, and I was like, oh my gosh, so good. So Thunderhead is the sequel to Scythe, and it's the second book in the Arc of the Scythe trilogy. I need to explain that Scythe, first of all, is set in a futuristic, utopian kind of world. Every sickness has been cured. If you get an accident, they can literally get you immediately. If you die, they can basically bring you back to life, as long as you haven't been killed by fire or acid, because then there'll be like not enough of your body to put you back together. Lovely stuff, I know. It's actually just not very graphic, which is very much like appreciated. It could have been quite bad because of like everything being cured, and because of you literally not being able to die except in like very extreme circumstances. Exist these people called scythes who are basically extremely well trained via these like apprenticeships by older, more learned scythes. The scythe's role is essentially to like legally murder someone. So they need to like control the population, otherwise it could kind of get crazy. And because everyone's on like a stable income, there's no like poverty or anything like that, people could just keep living and living and living, and I think the average like lifespan is a lot longer, and you can also reset to like make yourself look younger and all this stuff. Crazy world. These sides have to exist in order to kill people. Why did I put that in quotation marks? It's such a thing. To murder people. Legally. The beginnings of this like new order of sides who are very corrupt and greedy and power hungry. So things kind of go a bit crazy towards the end of sides. They're kind of exploring the world. We're following 2 apprentice sides called Citra and Ronan. I always say Ronan, but that's literally not his name. Don't want to be sides, but they got chosen because usually it's the people who don't want to be sides who are the best people to be them, obviously, because they're basically given the chance to kill, which is pretty crazy privilege. So then Thunderhead picks straight up from the end of side, completing their training, but then exploring the world more, figuring out what's going on with these new order corrupt sides, and also looking at the old order sides who are very like good people but kind of stuck in their ways as well. So it's kind of like trying to go between that and see where we lie, and it's just insane. And also the name of the book, Thunderhead, is referring to this thing, which is basically like a cloud like presence, like the internet, and you can communicate with it and it can like relate to you, and like it's basically the search engine for anything as well. I got interrupted again. I can't communicate with sides because it makes sense for the computer. Basically this massive computer shouldn't be communicating with people who are murdering people because it could like influence them, and obviously we don't want computers in charge of deciding who lives and who dies because that would be quite concerning.
Particularly puppety.
Would not be a good idea.
11.
The Thunderhead sees this massive issue with these corrupt sides but can't interfere. What I loved about this book was that it explores the idea of a creator pondering its own creation, pondering its own creators, because Thunderhead was created by people but also feels like this like godlike figure. This is such a good angle. I feel like I've ruined everything. I am sorry. It felt like a very philosophical book with lots of... I'm describing this in such a bad way. I'll definitely link below a video where I speak in a better way because right now I'm just word vomiting and it's not great. That's what happens when you're trying to talk about the thing you love. That's Thunderhead. No one's gonna pick it up now. I've literally just ruined this book's entire reputation in one video, like a 3-minute clip. Yeah, I would recommend it. Don't listen to me, but also listen to me, you know. Don't listen to my explanation of it, but listen to my intention, which is to get you guys to read this book. It's a good one. That was exhausting. Okay. Next book that I have on this list is Violet Bent Backwards Over the Grass by Lana Del Rey. So this is Lana Del Rey's poetry slash like kind of like almost essay book. I don't own a physical copy yet again because I read this on audiobook and I loved it. If you guys don't know, I am a big Lana Del Rey fan. I love her music so much. I've loved her since I was probably like 14, maybe earlier if that's even when she was around. I honestly can't remember anything. Yeah, I'm a big Lana Del Rey fan, so I was scared going into this book because I was like, I'm either gonna love this because it's like her and I'm not gonna be able to tell, or I'm going to dislike it and be heartbroken because I love her. But I loved it, and I don't think it's just because I liked her. I genuinely think that she is a very good writer, a very good poet, which you can tell because she's part of the writing process for a lot of her songs, and she's written like little poems that she's shared via like IGTVs on Instagram, and I'd always like appreciated her writing, and I like her whole like aesthetic, and I think that it's really captured in this book. It's kind of like a love letter to her home and her country and people in her life, music. And the audiobook was beautiful because it is her speaking. In the background there's like sound effects, so there's kind of like jazz music, or there's piano, or rushing traffic, or the sea, or laughter, or like literally anything, and it'll go along with the parts of the poem. It's really natural and beautiful, and sometimes there'd be like a minute or two of just sounds, not with her speaking, not with any poetry or anything like that, and it was really like such a beautifully done audiobook, which is also available on vinyl, which I'm kind of tempted to get, but I also feel like how often would I actually realistically listen to that? But you know, I definitely want to get a physical copy of the book, but I would definitely recommend, if you guys are interested in it, picking it up via audiobook because it is very like immersive. I actually read it during a road trip from Cornwall back to my house in the summertime. It was a perfect like thing for the car for like a long journey because I could just get lost in it, and it was very beautiful. And next up we're gonna have another one which I'm gonna word bomb over because it's my second favourite book of the year, and that was Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. So again, I spoke about this in my November wrap up, and I feel like I really did a good job at explaining my thoughts and the plot of this book, but I'll briefly try to do that right now. Everything I Never Told You follows a Chinese American family living in suburban America. There is a mother, father, there's an older sister, a brother, and a younger sister. The story focuses on the older sister as she goes missing. You don't know anything about this girl in like real time, but kind of following this kind of investigation case into like where she is, but also flashing back in time to, first of all, the daughter's life and like the few months kind of like, or year or so prior to her disappearance, as well as many years back, like 20 years or whatever, to when the father and mother first met and fell in love and the beginning of their marriage. And it's this kind of conversation on suburban life, race, gender and gender roles, because it's set in the 70s, 80s, I literally can't remember, that's so bad. Also about childhood and growing up, mental health, like it's a conversation on so many things, and I think it's so important and particularly like poignant because of its discussions of kind of like mixed race households. It's about this like fundamental thing about how the mother and the father can't understand and interpret each other. No matter how much they love each other and how much they try, there's always going to be a slight difference between them, because for the mother she is a woman and for the father he is Asian. There's always that difference that they can't wrap their heads around each other's experiences because they're never going to personally experience those things themselves. And I thought that was really beautiful, very heartbreaking and important. And then there's this twist at the end that explains what happened to the daughter, and honestly, I was sitting actually in this exact spot listening to the audiobook on my beanbag, crying for about the last 20 minutes of the audiobook. It was just so beautiful and satisfying, the ending, but also so heartbreaking. The more I think about it, the more I just fall in love with it, and I recommend it to everybody. There are some big like themes discussed, but I think it's a very like important read, but also a great, like very compelling piece of fiction. The last book is actually another one in the Folk of the Air series, and it is How the King of Alflame Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black, kind of companion short story collection that goes along with the Folk of the Air series, which is following the Queen of Nothing, which I mentioned first in this video. And this is beautiful. This is illustrated by Ravina Kai, and their illustrations are just honestly some of the most beautiful ones I've ever seen in my life. There's some great double spreads in here. The actual book itself is like shiny and textured, and under the dust jacket's beautiful. Then it's got these incredible gold end papers. Like the production like value of this book is just insane, and I think it must have cost a lot of money to make. I definitely recommend this book. It's a great collector's piece if you're into the series. Not just that, it's like a very valuable addition to the series and explains a lot of the characters, particularly Carden, who's the like fairy prince figure in The Cruel Prince, his like motivations and the reasoning behind like the way he is. I probably wouldn't read this one on its own. I definitely would recommend this book. I don't think it's like a kind of optional one, unless you really didn't like the series, then maybe leave it. But even then, come to enjoy the series more if you took the time to read this book, because I feel like it does explain a lot of things. It also brings up the conversation that's like, should the kind of lack of development throughout the series be allowed to be explained by an additional book that isn't technically like required reading for the series? You know, it's kind of like a funny question, but still I love this so much, and I love the illustrations. It really inspired me to create my own art, try a new style of drawing, which I came to really love. Look, so cute. So that is the end of this video. I can't believe I got through the entire thing. Actually managing to get words out of my mouth, because like really is a struggle, as you guys know. I've not been doing very well at that as of late. If you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I promise there'll be more videos coming in the future. I can finally leave 2020 content behind because it's February 2nd today. Like, what am I still doing? I think I'm gonna have a journal with me video coming next if you guys are interested in that, so please stick around if you are. And without further ado, I'm gonna leave you guys. This is the longest video that I've filmed in a long time. I'm sure you're bored of it. See you later. Bye.